Republican presidential candidate Senator Ted Cruz of Texas comes out on top in the Value Voter Summit straw poll held yesterday, cementing his position as a favorite among social conservatives. He got 35% of the vote. I talked with Cruz from his new campaign office in Iowa about Speaker John Boehner's resignation the other day and what's ahead for Republicans in the Congress. Here's part of what he said.
Let other people talk to him about that.
Senator, it's great to see you this morning. So I assume, like most conservatives, you were not saddened to see John Boehner go. The question is, was he pushed, or did he do this under his own steam? What's do you think the right interpretation of what just happened?
Well, look, I mean, that's a question for him to answer. What I will say, I certainly wish John Boehner the best in his next chapter. I hope that we see a new Speaker of the House who is a strong conservative. And what I think is most important for House leadership, and for that matter for Senate leadership, is that they will actually honor the commitments we made to the men and women who elected us. The reason people are so frustrated out of their minds with Washington is, as conservatives, we keep winning elections, and the people who we elect don't do what they said they would do. I hope this very much serves as a wake-up call to House leadership, that the promises we make on Election Day, we need to follow through once we're in office.
Conservatives were pleased that John Boehner announced his resignation. You were among them. Do you think you celebrated too vigorously in public the fact he's leaving?
Well, listen, what my focus is on, it's not on any one individual. To be honest, look, I don't really know John Boehner. He doesn't speak to conservatives, a whole lot of conservatives in the Senate. I don't really know him personally. It has nothing to do with the man personally. What it has to do with is the leadership in both chambers. If either John Boehner or Mitch McConnell would stand up and lead, would defend the conservative principles we were elected to defend, I would be the first one to celebrate them, to praise them. It's not about, this is where so much of the mainstream media tries to make it a personality fight, tries to make it a food fight. Look, we saw that in the debate. The last debate, I thought they were going to turn it into Jerry Springer, have one of us pick up a chair and throw it at the other. You know, I ain't going to play that game.
So is the government going to shut down over Planned Parenthood? Should it? Is it worth it for Republicans?
Well, I don't think we should have a shutdown. I think it would be a mistake if President Obama forces a shutdown. What President Obama has said is really quite remarkable. He has threatened to shut the government down over Planned Parenthood. Here's what I believe Congress should do. We should fund the entire federal government, every bit of it. But we should use our constitutional power of the purse to decline to give $500 million of taxpayer money to Planned Parenthood, a private organization. It's not part of the government. It's currently under multiple criminal investigations for committing an ongoing felonies, and we should also use the power of the purse to prohibit any federal funds from being used to implement this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. It's interesting, at that last presidential debate, there were a lot of candidates who talked about Planned Parenthood, but I don't see a single one of them standing up and leading on Planned Parenthood when the fight is actually happening. I would welcome all 10 of those men and women who were in California come to Washington, stand up and lead the fight when the fight is actually being waged, and when we're deciding whether Republicans are going to honor the commitments we made to the men and women who elected us, or simply engage in show votes.
Who would you like to see replace John Boehner? Would you be happy with Kevin McCarthy of California?
You know, Tucker, I've always said that I'm going to leave House leadership decisions to members of the House. That is appropriate for them to make it. I'm describing the characteristics that I think House leadership should embody, and in particular, the most important characteristic is a faithfulness, a fidelity to the men and women we're working for.
Conservatives were pleased that John Boehner announced his resignation. You were among them. Do you think you celebrated too vigorously in public the fact he's leaving?
Well, listen, what my focus is on, it's not on any one individual. To be honest, look, I don't really know John Boehner. He doesn't speak to conservatives, a whole lot of conservatives in the Senate. I don't really know him personally. It has nothing to do with the man personally. What it has to do with is the leadership in both chambers. If either John Boehner or Mitch McConnell would stand up and lead, would defend the conservative principles we were elected to defend, I would be the first one to celebrate them, to praise them.
You're, Senator, in your new campaign office in Iowa, the first state, the first contest, the caucus there, and you're talking to voters. What are the real issues of concern to Republican primary voters, the ones you've talked to?
Well, people are frustrated. They're frustrated with the direction of this country. They're frustrated with a stagnant economy where millions of Americans are hurting. They're frustrated with the federal government assaulting our constitutional rights. And they look at the Obama-Clinton foreign policy leading from behind is a manifest disaster. And they're looking for a leader they can trust. You know, all of us have seen campaign conservatives, people who talk a good game on the trail, but haven't walked the walk. I believe what Republican primary voters are looking for is a consistent conservative, someone who is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
I want to go to the Pope. You watched his swing through Washington the last couple of days. Do you think the Pope was direct and specific enough in his calls for religious liberty when he was in Washington?
Well, I'm very glad the Pope came to Washington. I thought it was truly a remarkable experience to sit on the floor of the House of Representatives in a joint session of Congress and listen to the Pope speak to us. And I think his message encouraging all of us to appeal to our higher angels, to put aside petty differences and to come together on shared values to solve the great challenges of the day. I think that was a very important message. I hope that leaders on both sides of the aisle listen to and heed that message. You know, I have to say, Tucker, I was more than a little amused watching the mainstream media try to pitch the Pope's visit as somehow wonderful for Democrats. I mean, basically, they're trying to turn Pope Francis into an official spokesperson for the Democratic National Party. That's more than a little amusing. Pope Francis is a powerful voice for life. He is a powerful voice for marriage. He is a powerful voice for religious liberty. All three are under profound assault in America right now. And it was striking. It was sad that when Pope Francis on the floor of the House of Representatives called for us to defend human life at every stage of development, to see virtually every Democrat sitting there stone-faced with their arms crossed, glaring at the Pope, rather than standing together on the most basic obligation all of us have, which is to defend life.